Well, hello. Here we are once again. This is John Huey and Michael Tingley.
Hello.
And we are here at the Sober Atheist podcast. And today's auspicious number is episode 30. That's not bad. I mean, we're both here, right? And we're going to dig into something that may stir the pot a little bit in certain quarters. And the topic we're going to try to elucidate in our usual understated way is there an atheist way of life that is applicable to recovery? And what sparked this was my continual amazement at and shall we say growing chagrin at this business of you hear it over and over again, such things as a 12-step way of life, often connected with this idea. I did get that book, by the way, the Emotional Sobriety guy's book. I don't want them to say I didn't buy their fucking book. But the phrase emotional sobriety comes into play. And then you see people with these little tomes of books. They have even, one of our late members, person we know, they put out these daily reflections books, which go way, way back in history into I think the 1940s, the first ones. That give you a framework for your day, all right? So we got a 12-step way of life. You're going to be emotionally sober, and we're going to have daily reflections, all right? We're going to reflect daily on what we do in life. And then if we can't get it, if we can't really encompass all of that, we're going to fake it till we make it, right, Michael?
Right.
Fake it.
There you go.
Were you good at faking it till you make it? I wasn't very good at that.
Well, whenever I heard that, I always thought that they were saying, go ahead and lie.
Yeah, of course.
And that didn't make sense to me.
I wasn't very good at that.
Why lie?
All right?
I mean,
yeah, but as we were discussing a little bit before you informed me that it would be a good idea to hit the record button, which is always a good thing to do if you're going to do a podcast, I think this stuff is, for some people, not for everyone, is in both insidious and dangerous. Because if you can't do these things that these groups are saying you should do, then you might not be identified publicly or openly as a failure.
But everyone will whisper behind your back that you are going to drink and die.
And you are failing,
yeah.
Okay? And fuck that, okay? Particularly for our atheist brothers and sisters. Because most of these things, these approaches that we deal with, come down to a list of instructions that can indeed go into granular detail about what you should be and do and think in your life. And for people of a naturally rebellious temperament,
or even just inquisitive temperament.
Oh, yeah, or even just an inquisitive temperament, these lists may go awry. And if you are looking for support and help and a context in which you have people around you who are caring about you, which is often the case, actually. I'm not saying these people don't care
Yeah.
but they care in a specific kind of way, right? So we're sitting here on the outside of all of that, not having anything to do with any of that stuff anymore after many years of exposure to it. And, uh, they not everybody finds these things useful in getting and staying sober, right? But let's always step back a bit, okay? I mean, we say this stuff isn't useful for us, but there are legions of people out there that subscribe to those ideas, and those ideas and concepts and methodologies are useful to them. We're not going to contradict that.
And it was perfectly useful for me when I first got into recovery. I mean, it provides a framework that we didn't have before we were sober, and that can be very helpful. And it opened a lot of doors for me. I have no qualms with that at all, But it gets to a point where it begins to work against you.
Right. Well, I was of such a temperament that shit was never useful to me. All right. I just didn't subscribe to it. But what was intensely and incredibly useful were, and we've gone over this, we've trod this ground before, was, the contextual narrative that people have when they stop using and drinking and then start to progress through their lives without the substance. And you can see, I've told some anecdotes about, seeing people that I'd known or sort of on the peripherally had seen in Washington when they were drinking, and then seeing a different person sitting in one of those chairs in those places.
Yeah.
So I couldn't deny that. That part was transformative for me because I saw the power of abstinence right away.
Yeah.
That's what did it for me.
Yeah.
All this other stuff was stuff that I just tolerated. I didn't subscribe to any of it, but I tolerated it because of the power of the fellowship of being in a room with people who were getting better, who were transforming their lives.
Yeah.
That's a powerful thing that you can't deny. But they'll turn it around on you as an atheist, and they'll tell you, well, if you're going to have this full experience that we're communicating, right? You got to do this other stuff. You got to do this stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't do this stuff, you're not going to be, And
in other words, you have to believe. You have to have a faith in God, higher power, whatever you want to call it. But you have to have that in order to succeed. And ultimately, you're not going to succeed if you don't.
Right. Well, if I live to January 3rd of next year, I will have had 40 years of sober living without any of that.
Yeah,
okay?
Right.
So what's up with some broken down old mother like me, right?
Yeah. So how did you do it, John?
How did I do it?
How did you find your way?
The magic. I'll tell you, the magic elixir. Let
me throw in real quick, though, a little point about all of that, the list of instructions and all that you get exposed to when you first get into AA or NA is ultimately when I first got into recovery and I was expressing my doubts about that list and those procedures and those beliefs, I was always told by the old timers, the people who had been sober 35, 40 years, all they would say was, well, just don't drink and keep coming back. And the irony is that that's what really ultimately works for all of us. And those of us who have rejected that program, ultimately we don't drink and we keep coming back. That's
okay. All right. Well, for the committed atheist, and I think we can define ourselves that way, the two of us sitting on this screen or in this earbuds or ear pads or whatever people use to listen to this stuff these days. For us, the path to long-term sobriety was very different, involving a way of life. Ooh, we have a way of life. We have a way of life, okay? Involving a way of life that is considerably at variance to what is contained in these conventional approaches, right?
And that's, in fact, I think why it works, those traditional programs work for so many people, because it did provide them a way of life that they had never had before.
Yeah. I mean, I have friends, I have people I have known for 50 years or more than 50. God, I guess the years are piling up.
Yeah.
For long, long years, who are in fact religious, and for whom the religious underpinnings of conventional recovery would work, all right? But we rejected those things and rejected them outright.
So we had to come up with a different way of life.
Right, because, that stuff, for us, that stuff is fundamentally untrue, all right? The religious underpinnings of all that stuff is fundamentally untrue, all right? I mean, the fact that, I think thou shalt not kill is a pretty good idea, right? Doesn't give them a monopoly on not killing other people, right?
Right.
Okay? I mean, thou shalt not kill. I mean, do you have to believe the whole fucking book to believe thou shalt not kill? Okay,
right.
Okay. All right, so don't tell me you've got a secret word or password or code or some sort of door you're going to open up to life in that way. For me, it will perhaps, and often does, open up a pathway and a life for others. And we're not going to contradict that. All right?
Right.
I mean, there are people that are maybe listening. I think we've got a couple of listeners to our podcast who are around that they just totally disagree with that. They say, well, what are you talking about? Okay. What we're talking about is stuff that could be destructive to us as recovering people if we subscribe to it, absolutely knowing it's untrue.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've been told we have to assume and assemble an identity or a group of concepts that really aren't us, right?
Right.
That's why we do this thing, right? Because we're trying to communicate the fact that it's not absolutely necessary to follow the path that people tell you, as long as you made a decision, right?
You don't drink.
About your use or your drinking or your use and your drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to the word abstinence. We're like a proverbial broken records, aren't we? What are these guys that go on and on about this abstinence stuff? Well, we go on and on about this abstinence stuff because atheists are dying out there because they can't get to the point of understanding that that's the point. All this other crap is not the point.
Right.
It's decision, abstinence. Well, how are we doing this? We were just in a meeting today, right, about our old faces showing up in a meeting on Sunday afternoon when we could probably be doing something else. And we're there for the other part, which is important, which is the mutual support part.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I'll give him his due. That old bastard, dead bastard, died of emphysema, supposedly wanted a drink on his deathbed. That's a rumor that's floated around since forever. But assembling and endorsing a regular gathering of people for mutual support is not a bad idea.
It's a great idea.
A great idea. Okay, and it to this day, we see things and meet people on our screen in our meetings that we see some remarkable stuff almost every week, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see either people doing remarkable things. There's a guy on there today doing just fucking remarkable stuff to help others. And that really resonates because that stuff, that remarkable stuff that we see being done is only being possible because that person is grasping and holding on to that decision that they made and their understanding of the word abstinence.
Right.
Not this other stuff.
Right.
All right. And, just the realization, at least in my case, okay, I ended up in recovery because I drank too much. Okay. I didn't end up in recovery because of my inherently bad character, which I may or may not have, or, my mommy yelling at me when I was young, which she most certainly did, but she loved me with every pore. Yeah, she was a love machine when it came to her kids. But, it was the 50s and 60s and we got yelled at. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody worried about our psychological, consequences of whatever. It wasn't because of any stuff like that or any circumstance. It was because I sat on a bar stool in Putney, Vermont, and the years I got addicted were the years just before 70, 71, 72, graduated from college, 72. Those years I can sort of put my finger on the years when I became totally addicted to alcohol.
Right.
And it wasn't because of a character flaw. It was because I drank too much.
Yeah, the defects of character and selfishness and all those things that are listed as the reason why we need to be recovering. It never really made much sense to me either. I mean, I was addicted to alcohol and drugs because I chose to use alcohol and drugs. I mean, I made the decision to drink. It wasn't because I was a bad, evil, selfish, character defected person. I chose to drink and drug.
Well, I had, as I've talked about before, I had a recent experience with pain in a very serious back operation in October that I came back from an overseas trip and I was in terrible shape. And I am not attracted to opioids. I've never have been. I've never been attracted to speed. I liked LSD till it didn't work for me anymore. And quite frankly, marijuana just bores the shit out of me. Okay. I just, what I really liked is drinking. Okay. And the socializing and the camaraderie and the boisterous living and everything associated with it. I loved it. All right. So opioids was never my thing, but I had a real instruction about addiction in October when I was all kinds and all forms of Dilaudid, injected pills, IV, everything. Okay. And the pain was so bad in one instance to get an MRI, the Dilaudid wouldn't work. They had to knock me out altogether with that we talked about the propofol that time.
Yeah. Wonderful
when they
propofol.
put me in the MRI. No, I couldn't get. I was in such pain when they tried to put me on that table. It was, they were astonished at the level of, and so I was really doped up. And my wife she still talks about some of the hallucinations because she was by the bedside the whole time. She still talks about some of the hallucinations I started having when I was taking that stuff. But I didn't crave it and didn't want it. And when I got home with a giant bottle of Dilaudid, that if we were in an NA context, that people would be looking for my address because I had that giant, bottle of Dilaudid. But I didn't seek it. And, I sought out, and Kaiser very kindly has a specialist, a pharmacist, a PhD pharmacist. She's the one at Kaiser that knows more about opioids than anybody. And my wife got on the phone, and the three of us got on the phone with her, and this lady up at this fancy hospital in Baltimore talked me through stepping that stuff down. And 30 days after I left the hospital, I was done. Right. And there's still a bottle of hydromorphone sitting in the back somewhere. I had no desire whatsoever for it because it was a very powerful drug. I had a very powerful drug experience, but no program, no nothing got me off it. It was just a decision to follow instructions step by step until I was done. And when I was done, I was done. All right. So, but most certainly I had a brain impact from it, but it was just practical reality that got me off it.
Right. And that decision. The
decision to follow the instructions and to have my wife sitting with me, and we were both looking at the chart. I've got somebody around that's really good at planning and stuff, which I'm not. And she helped me in the this PhD she's a pharmacist. She's a brilliant lady, really smart lady. And she that's what we do. Okay. We make a decision about a substance and then we remove it from our body. And then in the case of the substance, I don't have any addictive things about opioids. That's not my thing. But most certainly, I had more than a teeny weeny Jack Daniels problem. All right. I had a real big Jack Daniels, Heineken, and any other kind of alcohol that was attractive to me problem. And, the key to a happy and productive life was not all this other foolishness, Michael. I don't think. It was stopping, right? Was that the way it was for you? I mean, the real key to the productive and happy, full life you have today, right? I think.
Yeah, and in my case, I've been addicted to absolutely everything. I enjoy every one of those things. Every form of alcohol, every form of pill, every form of powder. I mean, I've been through many addictions, and every time it still just came down to making that decision to be abstinent and to not use anymore. I mean, there was plenty of reasons, plenty of rationales for that, the circumstances and the dark holes that I ended up in, but still it still came down to me making that decision.
Yeah. But it did, confession and contrition wasn't part of it. All right.
No, no. I think it was just being honest. The honesty part is very important. Recognizing that I was an addict was a turning point for me. I mean, I was in denial about my addictions for 35 years. I used from 35 years of my life. I was using all the time, and I never once told myself that I was an addict or that I had a problem. Because that meant that I would ultimately would have to stop. Even now, even though I've stopped now 20 years, it's still a part of my brain that I automatically go there, where that denial about being an addict. It still pops up once in a while when I'm confronted with emotional situations or the grieving, any of those life-changing events that take place throughout our lives. I mean, I still have that urge in my brain to go back to that denial. So for me, that's the key, just avoiding that denial and being honest about the fact that I love all those substances, and I'll never get enough of them. And I have to remind myself of that all the time, that, if I go back to any of that stuff, I still will never get enough. And that's what makes me an addict. That's still a part of who I am. And I have to recognize that, be honest about it. And that leads to having a better way of life, just following a better path. It's so much easier without those addictions.
Right. Well, I think we're formulating an ideas about our atheist way of life. Our way of life.
There you go.
Follow us. Our way of life. Our way of life involves letting you find your own path.
Right.
And doing whatever we can to reinforce whatever decision you made to stop using.
Right.
To stop drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But whatever path you're using, I mean, I've got some of my atheist friends. I've got one old atheist friend, cantankerous old atheist friend, who has been doing transcendental meditation since 1967 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he's a hardcore militant atheist, and TM helps him through his day, right?
Yeah.
It would never help me through my day. I'm not built. I've never been, but the last thing I would do would be to tell a friend that their methodology is not sound because they are sober today. Right?
Right.
The only methodology that isn't sound is, day drinking when it's cold and it's snowy outside. Okay.
Yeah.
I had a big tendency back in the 70s and early 80s, like whenever there was a excuse not to be at work, and we used to have some big snowstorms here in the old days on climate change. But in DC, a big storm is nothing compared to some other parts of the country, but it closes down the town. And I just longed for those days when I could go to my favorite old bar, the Admiral Benbow on Connecticut Avenue at Connecticut and R, and sit on that bar stool and wait for other day drinking friends to arrive. And then the festivities would begin. I'm really attracted to that sort of thing. And, now there's a bar where day drinking occurs right across the street from us. It's called World of Beer. All right. And many of the local alcoholics, well, it's not cheap. It's not a cheap bar like the bars my old time bar, but pretty expensive, actually. Not crazy expensive, but not cheap. But so there are these people that can afford it. They're in their day drinking their brains out. whenever the weather is bad. All right. But that's not me. And it's right across the street because I know that walk across the street would end up in complete and utter disaster.
Right.
I don't do that. All right.
Well, I had to learn that. That didn't come naturally to me. I mean, I had to learn that. I had to learn that the hard way a couple of times. You know, this is my third attempt at sobriety, and it goes back to that same denial that I don't really have a problem. I just have to be careful about it and control it, and it was a major change for me, to be honest about it.
Well, it's not only a change to be honest, it's a change to it's a shock to the nervous system when you change your brain chemistry. All right? There's a thing called detox that can go on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why early sobriety is so perilous.
Sure.
Because you're still sort of reassembling some of the logic, the circuits, right, that got short-circuited somehow when you're drinking and using. Not that everything is perfect when you do complete detox, but it's all a logical progression that once it's seen, it can be understood. All right. I don't know if you ever experienced that moment of euphoria when you first realized that the alcohol and the drugs were leaving your system and that those things weren't going to kill you after all. That's what they call the pink cloud experience. I don't know if you ever had such.
No, I never really bought into that. You know, detoxing was always so painful to me that I never even immediately after detoxing, I never experienced any kind of a pink cloud, and I've always kind of laughed at that term. You know, I mean,
it's one of those hokey
AA vocabulary that never really made a lot of sense to me.
But I did experience a sense of euphoria one day. I distinctly remember it. I had an office down at 20th and M, and in those days, it was a lot of running back and forth to the word. It was before late 80s, before everybody had a PC. And, I'd run back and forth to this room where the ladies would take care of my stuff, correspondence and stuff, and copying and stuff. And I came out of there one day, and I just felt, it was shortly after I had begun to detox, and I felt a great lift, a weight. It was like a weight that had been removed from me.
Mm-hmm.
And some people would call that a spiritual experience, but what it was my brain finally being able to breathe a little bit. Okay?
Yeah.
Because I was really, really addicted, and the substance was just permeating, your everything. And that was like going away. And that's a kind of experience that
I would call that an emotional experience more than a spiritual experience.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I didn't, all of a sudden buy the copier, get down on my knees. No, that's not going to happen, okay? And
I mean, you don't have to give credit to anything outside of you for that. I mean,
I didn't go down the street to get holy water sprinkled on my head or anything.
Give yourself credit for accomplishing that.
Right. But that was one of those experiences, that experience of euphoria I had that day when I quit, that was reinforcing my commitment to abstinence.
Right.
Because I wasn't getting that feeling if I went back and drank. Okay? There's a hopelessness that can seep into early recovery when these changes are happening.
Oh yeah. I went through a pretty deep depression first couple years of my sobriety this time, and because I was detoxing off of not only alcohol, but I was detoxing off of methadone because I was previously detoxing off of heroin. So it took a while for my body to adjust to that loss of all those things in my body. And that was a challenging time because of the depression. It started that hopelessness started to seep in. And if it wasn't for the fact that I just kept going back to meetings and reaffirming my desire to stay clean and sober, that I got through that early detoxing. Yeah, and I've talked to doctors too who've said that some of those effects, the detoxing, can linger for years and years.
Oh
so,
yeah,
it's not.
Oh yeah,
it's not something that automatically goes over. It just disappears right away. So.
Right. When I look back on my early days, which I don't think I look back on those early days often enough, actually. But when I look back on those early days, I see that to get completely free of all of the substance I was using took about 18 months.
Yeah.
That was a very tough, in its own way, time, right? Because of that. And I grasped on to whatever I could grasp on to that meant something to me, but it didn't include all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I can see how somebody who's vulnerable, who needs to grasp onto something when they're going through that period, particularly the early period, when you're really grappling with life, it's a different life you're getting here when you stop that stuff.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? I'm going to grab onto this 12-step way of life or emotional sobriety, or I'm going to use a book to daily reflect upon my, activities and ideas for the day. And I didn't have any of that shit.
Well, that presents very complicated challenges. Instead of the simplicity of simply giving yourself credit for getting to that point where you're starting to detox, you're starting to recover, instead of just saying, keep going, because you have the strength and the power to make that decision every day. Instead of being told, well, it's because of all these things on the list that you're doing or not doing. And it sets up the possibility for failure, because how can you possibly accomplish all of those things and still be honest about it?
Well,
it's very difficult.
But the satisfaction that I've seen upon reflection is that we found our own individual path in our own individual ways without recourse to the decisions about what constituted a sober life made by others.
Right.
We don't, in many, the atheists that I'm trying to talk to here, we don't need to subscribe to decisions about our lives that other people made. We can honestly find our own path and our own way through this if, of course, and I think this is, I don't want to seem to be contradicting myself. Well, we say we find our own way through this, but it is important to find a group of like-minded people that you can identify with as you travel through the process.
Yeah. And you don't have to. It makes it easier.
It makes it easier. No, you don't have to do any of this.
Yeah.
I know people, I've been around the world a lot in a lot of other cultures, and I won't get too specific, but I know a bit about a culture out in the steppes of the Far East. And in that tribal culture, I've heard of more than one instance, actually several instances, of the tribal leader or the mullah coming to the person and telling the person that they have shamed the clan and that they are a disgrace to the clan. And I actually know of several instances that I know are true because I know intimately who is being talked about, that worked, okay? That mullah or tribal leader or whatever bring you into the place and sit you down and say, you are a disgrace, right? And that works in that culture, right? For them. I've seen it work. I know it works. Now, there are a lot of others that die in the gutter. I mean, if you, in this particular place, it can be minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit outside. And if you get drunk and you fall down in the, you're gone. Okay. Those people are gone. But there are people that actually, that doesn't work generally. It may work sometimes, but generally here, you need a mutual or some kind of form of identification that you can latch onto while you proceed in your own way, at your own time, at your own pace, with your own set of definitions. My set of definitions are for me, right? Michael, your set of definitions you've talked about are for you.
Right.
The net result can be the same as far as the length of time you've been able to rebuild a life without the substance. But there we are, right? Okay? It's us. It's not them. It's not some other entity or individual or person telling us who or what we are.
Yeah.
Okay? That produces in many cases that I know about, that sort of attitude can produce a long-term sobriety, as can, I know a lot of people that go back to those lists and those books and that reflections and that contrition and that, crying about your sins all the time and all that kind of stuff that sort of cleanse you and allow you to be sober. Well, we don't have opinions about how people do that when we meet them and they're atheists, right?
Yeah. I felt so disingenuous when I was trying to go along with that list of things that I was supposed to do and how I was supposed to think, how I was supposed to feel. I didn't feel genuine at all. I didn't feel honest. And I think that's the danger with falling into that program, that cult, is that you're setting yourself up for failure very easily, because it's hard to go along with all of that stuff perfectly. And instead of giving yourself some credit for being who you are and giving yourself credit for being on a more positive path than you were when you were using, that seems a lot simpler to me than trying to go along with all of that program and the steps, all that stuff, instead of just being true to yourself.
Okay. And, I'm going to make a declarative statement at this point because we're going to, the clock is running, right? And I'm going to make a declarative statement here that the this is really going to get it. The atheist way of life is based on personal freedom as it relates to recovery and as it relates to every other aspect, right? Personal freedom is where it's at, all right? Now, it's based on personal freedom, I think, but there are always limits that come from within, not from without. There are limits that come from within. I mean, things like not harming others, like finding an ethical way forward, a way of life that you can live with yourself,
Right.
a way forward, right? And then in my case, I mean, it's just even later in life, coming to words like partnership, commitment, and love. You find those things on your own.
Yeah, a lot of that is found through tolerance and empathy. Just I think it's just being open to a positive path.
This stuff that I just was talking about, these things that I was just talking about, are found by us and us alone, not by some so-called program of recovery. We found this stuff. We executed this stuff. We understood this stuff, even slowly and painfully. I was 19 years sober before I really got the idea and was with someone to help me execute the ideas behind those words: partnership, commitment, and love. Right? I have friends that found that in their 20s. I was in my late 50s when I found it. All right. And now I'm in my late 70s. And that aspect of my life opened up an entirely new universe for me later on in life. Okay. That's not, I don't suggest it for anyone else. But what worked for me is the way in which I had to integrate myself and my personality and my desires to my sobriety and my life. Yeah. And some of this shit took too long. Okay, I'm not gonna try to gild it, right? I'm not gonna try to.
I wasted a few years on that path. I mean,
oh well, I still find it remarkable that the book I should have written in 1975, I didn't write until 2017. Okay, a lot of shit got delayed, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of shit got done, right?
There you go.
A lot of it got done. The atheist, in my mind, in this context, finds satisfaction in life as an adult, not as someone or people who are part of a flock or a group who need to be led. We find satisfaction in sobriety as an adult based on abstinence, and we're not a part of a flock, okay? Some herd that needs to be protected. You know, there's a journalist they want to throw in jail for supposedly interfering with a flock. I mean, that just that kind of stuff. It
Yeah.
just doesn't go.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Right.
We don't do that. All right. But we've been talking about during this hour about what we do, right, Michael? I mean, you got a lot of things that you did, right?
Yeah. And ultimately, it does seem kind of simple when we try to describe it, because it does just come down to that, making that decision to remain abstinent opens the doors to so much more positive path. It seems relatively simple now in hindsight. And then that path is easy to maintain by staying connected to other people that are trying to do the same thing. Those are two real simple concepts to me that give myself credit for doing those things. Those are things that I can take credit for.
Keeping my moment of decision about my drinking in the forefront of my life has been of inestimable value to me because of the long and winding path it took. Oh, I was going to say long and winding road. We got to pay the incredible fee to their artist representatives. But finding that long and winding path, it was very painful for me those last 13 years of my drinking from age 25 to age 38. When I look back on those years and that pain, it is remarkable to me that I survived to age 38. To me, right? When I go downtown, I was thinking about this the other day when the snow was here and I was snowed in, and I got to worry about falling on the ice and all this other stuff. I was snowed in. I was sitting here and I was thinking, as I often do whenever I go down there, about the area of DuPont Circle where I was a habitué back in the 1970s in D.C. And in those days, there was a bohemian community. And, people, you didn't have to have a lot of money to live down there like you do today. And, a lot of action, a lot of stuff, a lot of fun going on down there. But when I go down there, on every corner, there's a ghost. My old friends, my old associates, my old buddies. It's a long list, okay, of smart, good, intelligent, capable, wonderful people who used substances and led them down the path one way or another to die, right? From all kinds of causes. Suicide, diseases, cancers, AIDS.
We'll be forever grieving
death.
a lot of those losses, that's for sure.
Well, premature deaths of all kinds of good people who I wish I could talk to.
Yeah.
I wish I got a whole stack of papers I could look up I've got my old phone book somewhere. I could look up old numbers and I can't give them a call.
Yeah.
Because they didn't make a decision about their substance use and drinking.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, pretty simple.
Well, being found dead in an apartment naked after having a burst esophagus with the DC police who broke down the door, coming in and laughing at you was not the way I wanted to go out. But I have a good friend of mine who went out exactly that way.
Yeah.
At age 43 or 44 from a busted esophagus from alcohol. So that wasn't me. And I probably survived a lot longer than I anticipated. But as an atheist, as a committed atheist, in this context of recovery, I can safely say that I did it on my own terms, not somebody else's.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said before, I think being able to give yourself some credit,
Well,
instead of passing the credit on to something outside of you, I think it's a lot healthier to say that I can take credit for this, because that encourages me to keep going and keep making that decision every day.
Right. We can take credit for what we do ourselves, but we in this atheist way of life, okay, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm getting ridiculous here about this way of life crap.
Yeah. Are there tablets somewhere that describe this way of life?
Well, those tablets are in the air and they don't really exist. We've got a problem with fiery tablets coming down from the mountain. We tend to think that that's fiction. But what isn't fiction in general is an attitude that I've noticed amongst my fellow atheists who are in recovery or in this whole realm of talking about recovery, is that unlike a lot of other places, we don't make a lot of judgments about other people and who they are and what they're doing or how they live or who they sleep with or any of that other stuff. We don't do that.
Well, we do a little bit. We do a little bit.
And
I mean,
yeah.
There's a certain amount.
I draw the line at MAGA, okay? I'm really bad with that. I was talking about that earlier today with you guys. Yeah, I draw the line at MAGA, and I won't have anything to do with them. And that's a sort of a contradiction of me not being judgmental. When it comes to them, I'm intensely judgmental, and they can go fuck themselves.
There are limitations to it.
Yeah, there are limitations on it. But when it comes to our fellow alcoholics and addicts, when we're dealing with people in the context of recovery, we don't make a lot of judgments.
And I mean, it sounds like we do sometimes when we're talking about what we don't like about AA and NA, but ultimately, we still believe that whatever gets you through the night, if you're abstinent,
for the people, let's go backwards because the clock is right. The people who are doing that, who find satisfaction in that, who I know have long-term recovery and good lives because they've done that, I don't have issue with that. I have issue with someone like myself or someone like yourself or some other atheist coming in off the street and being told either by implication or directly that they've got to do this, and this, or they're not going to survive. All we tell people is we made a decision and we became abstinent, and we reinforce that decision on a regular basis. That's it.
Yeah.
Do we say about,
Yeah.
But,
bottom line.
But are we compassionate toward others? If other people have problems, if they want to talk about their divorces or their kids or their illnesses or whatever, we try to be compassionate.
Yeah.
Okay. But we do draw the line at MAGA. At least here, we draw the line.
Yeah,
that's where we draw the line. It's a hard line.
I can only be so tolerant of
you can
so
only
many.
Be. It's just I'm not going to tolerate those motherfuckers. But here we go. We came to the end of the hour, and we're running a little bit over. But I think we did come to the conclusion that we do try to proceed in a way in which it gives people in our
Hope,
category, hope.
hope, hope.
And we do try
You
to
know,
proceed in the area of peace and love.
we
Okay.
do. We do.
And we are running over a little bit, but I will say, speaking of peace and love, our next uh, title of our next episode, unless it gets revised, which it may, is To Do What Moves You, Love and Sex as an Atheist in Recovery. That's gonna be
All
something.
right, all right. There you
Wow.
go.
How are we
We're
gonna
not
get
gonna have
through
to.
that one?
We're not gonna have to advertise for that.
No, how are we going to get through that, though? That's the question. We have to discuss that. But we have to
Yeah,
get out of here now and wish
yeah.
everybody a fond farewell. Oh, please remember to look us up on our Facebook group. And if you want to see our beautiful faces, all you got to do is go to YouTube and type in the Sober Atheist podcast. We come right up. And then you can see us in all our glory. So we'll say
Excellent.
goodbye for
All
now.
right. Peace and
Okay,
love.
we'll see you. Peace and love. Absolutely.